Good evening, young children. This past year in Science 10, as students have learned lots of different principles and ideas in our few units. The big ideas were genetics, where we studied DNA and how it is the basis for the diversity of living things. In chemistry we learned about energy change, and how it is required as atoms rearrange in chemical process. In physics we learned that energy is conserved, and its transformation can be affecting living things and the environment. And in astronomy we learned about the formation of the universe, and how it can be explained with the Big Bang Theory. Big idea in genetics was that DNA is the basis for the diversity of living things. We learned that DNA is the building blocks of life. We learned how to model DNA and what it is made up of. We learned about genetic disorders caused by mutation in the DNA. Genetic disorders are disabilities caused by a defect or mutation in the DNA sequence of a human being. And we learned and discussed about a new technology, gene editing. We learned new technology was used to remove certain illnesses on embryos, so they could grow up to live a better life. In class we discussed whether or not this technology should be allowed. We learned about how genetic and sex linked and how these traits can be passed down through generations and predict height, hair color, eye color, etc. And ways we could practice predicting this was with Punnett squares. Punnett squares are 4 boxed squares that are used as a tool to figure out which genotypes and phenotypes are inherited by organisms. The difference between genotypes and phenotypes is that phenotypes are what give you physical characteristics and genotypes offer specific inherited traits. We also learned about artifice and natural selection. The difference between artificial and natural selection are that natural selection is natural change in genetic variation in the characteristics of organisms, most likely caused by environment or need to survive. Artificial selection is when humans breed organisms to have traits that the human wants. The result of this is a loss in genetic variation. The big idea in chemistry is that energy change is required as atoms rearrange in chemical process. What we learned in our chemistry unit was about the rearranging of atoms and the atoms transferring into making new ionic and covalent compounds. And we learned how to balance these chemical equations. In our class we learned about 6 different types of chemical reactions: combustion, decomposition, single replacement, double replacement, displacement, and synthesis. For my chemical reactions project I studied gasoline combustion, and for the project I had to make a news report on the chemical reaction. I explained the reaction and what impacts it had on the environment and its chemical equation and balanced equation. For physics the big idea was energy is conserved, and its transformation can affect living things and the environment. In our physics unit this year we learned about many different types of energy: potential energy, chemical energy, kinetic energy, mechanical energy, atomic energy, convection energy, and energy transformation. For our final project we were tasked to do a home energy audit to have a view of how much energy we actually consume and how we can improve our energy efficiency. For our physics unit we visited the old BC hydro dam at Stave Lake. We learned about how they used to produce energy and how they do it now. We also went to Playland to learn about motion and kinetic energy and potential energy in the rides at Playland.
Big idea for astronomy was the formation of universe can be explained by the Big Bang. What we studied in this unit were that the universe was expanding, how the universe was created by the Big Bang, what Different technologies were used over the years to study our universe and the many different celestial bodies in our solar system, galaxy, and universe. We did presentations on the planets in our solar system, and for our final project made a documentary on our universe.
Being called to stewardship means that God has given us a job of being steward for His creation. And we have to accept His call and be earth caretakers, and take care of what we have. In our 4 units of Science 10, they all have a connection to being called to stewardship. In astronomy, we realize that we are not just existing on our Earth, but in a universe at an unthinkable size. But we should not take our Earth for granted. And we should properly take care of it before we do not have it. We are meant to study our Earth because it is God's gift to us, and in return we must take care of it for Him. In genetics, we learn that we are made up of DNA. And everyone is different. We learn that DNA can be altered and change creation, some done by nature, but it is mostly affected by humans who selfishly cause these changes for our own benefit. If we are more careful and we don't let this happen, and don't choose to let this happen. In chemistry, we have found out that small chemical processes are a huge part of our creation and function of life. By studying chemistry, we understand a bit more of the chemical reactions that happen in our creation. This way we can learn ways to preserve creation and care for it better. Our physics unit connects with being called to stewardship because we see the different types of energy in our world, how they are used and what they are used for. Some of the energy we use affects the environment in a bad way, and by doing our home energy audit we learned how to use less energy, thus being stewards and helping creation.
I'm the giant rat that makes all of the rules.